Twilight Gets a Puppy. By TDR. Chapter 119. Beast Night Ever. Epilogue. Princess Cadance sat down hard, water running down her form, ruining her dress and mane do and soaking her to the bone. Her makeup ran down her face in streaks as she turned her head to survey the carnage going around her. Most of the other guests were running around in a panic. There were screams, sobbing, and complete breakdowns. There was also a few ponies engaging in food fights, slinging water on one another, and Fancy Pants Date, Fleur-de-Lis, was currently trying to outsing Pinkie Pie. Animals surged around the room with Fluttershy and the ranger with her trying to corral them and get them to go back outside. Of course, with the panic of the gala, most of them were getting excited and running around even more, either trying to hide, or just eating everything they could scarf up. A trio of nobles had scrambled up a curtain and were peering over the edge of it at a white beach ball with rabbit ears, that was growling up at them and had chased them across the room. Granny Smith and Auntie Celestia were on the balcony overlooking everything, laughing at the goings-on below them. At least they were, until Celestia got hit with a flying cupcake. After that the pair came down and joined in the food fight. The two of them were offered a plate piled high by a caterer who had gotten a yellow rain slicker from somewhere and was using an umbrella as a shield as he resupplied every pony. Cadance briefly recalled the caterers had been forced into a deal by some noble or another that they would paid by the amount of food they made, not by time spent, this year. They were going to make a killing with the bill, and a royal accountant was likely going to have a heart attack. The musicians were currently sitting under a large umbrella with their instruments tucked away to prevent damage. The four of them seemed completely unfazed by the goings-on around them, focused more on whatever they were discussing at the moment. The trio of fillies she had seen earlier were having more fun now than they had the entire rest of the party, running around all over the place and getting into everything. Their dresses and manes were ruined, but they didn't seem to care as they bounced about doing all sorts of random things in attempts to get cutie marks. Of course, Auntie Luna was running right along with them. Rarity was screaming bloody murder and was chasing Prince Blue Blood around the main floor, attempting to smother him in a massive 4-tiered cake she had grabbed off the buffet table. Cadance would have gone to help him, but she couldn't miss the smirk on his face as he dodged Rarity's attacks and kept a good pace ahead of her, throwing back insults and boorish complaints every so often to keep the mare egged on. Cadance recalled the time he had invited her to Pony Plana to participate in the running of the cows and shuddered. Her cousin was unfortunately a thrill-seeking sort of noble. With how his parents sheltered him growing up, it was little surprise he turned out the way he did, the sort of pony who jumped off perfectly good airships and tried to miss the ground. Cadance let out a small sigh as the guards finally showed up and were completely useless in getting anything under control. Auntie Celestia and Granny Smith drew some into the food fight, some helped Fluttershy and the ranger scare the animals more. A few others were brought into whatever the foals and Luna were doing, which was a mistake as whatever they were doing then exploded. Twice. While Pinkie Pie had convinced one guard to enter her karaoke contest, most were just milling around in confusion, shouting commands and orders that were largely ignored by every pony else. Not for the first time she wondered where Shining Armor was. He was probably taking charge of the guards here and trying to get them organized or something. It was a pity, because she really wanted him here with her. She hadn't helped any pony find love tonight, and the feelings she had been following all night were so skewed with what was going on she doubted she could find anything at all to help with now. Her whole plan to help ponies fall in love at the gala was ruined. All she had done was cause anger and rage. That huge potential love that she had felt teetering on the brink was gone too, either run off, or masked behind the oddly flaring love of chaos she felt from somewhere. She was glad that the sprinkler system was making it rain indoors. Her first grand galloping gala had been a disaster. At least with the water no one would see her cry. Cadance. Her ears perked up as she turned her head, looking back over her shoulder. A panting Shining Armor stood behind her, his suit a mess and it looked like it had been clawed up by some of the animals. He also had a sloth clinging to his back that was trying to eat his mane, very slowly. Shining. Cadance sighed as she turned to face him, wiping her eyes with a foreleg. Shouldn't you be trying to help them fix this? If Princess Luna and Princess Celestia are involved, then it's still my day off. Shining sighed with a roll of his eyes. I've been looking for you all night after you ran off. What? Cadence blinked, having been certain he had been the one to run off. She watched Shining sink down onto his forelegs, his horn glowing as he pulled out a small box. It may not be the most romantic setting I could find, but just pretend it's a spring rain shower or something. Shining Armor sighed, ignoring the sloth and the rain as he opened the box, showing off a gold horn ring studded with a large pink diamond set in the center, ringed by a number of smaller diamond shards. Cadence's eyes widened. The feeling of love on the edge she had sensed earlier was practically blazing before her, and she had missed it all night. Cadence, will you marry me? Everything seemed to pause in that moment. Shining couldn't quite meet her gaze as she stared down at him. The water falling from the sky seemed to slow as Cadence felt her own heart beating in her chest. In the next moment, there was a sudden flap of wings and a blur of pink propelled itself forward with enough speed to leave an after-image of water in the air where she and Shining had been. There was a loud thud of impact, and a confused sloth went sailing through the air only to quickly be caught by Fluttershy. The yellow Pegasus winced as she noted where the pair had wound up, across the room with a good bit of furniture rubble around them and with Cadence wrapped around Shining Armor, who had somehow managed to keep hold of the ring. I think that is a yes. Fluttershy offered as the sloth squeaked in agreement. Asterisk. The day after the Grand Galloping Gala, Ponyville. Golden Oak's library was filled with laughter. Frankly, it annoyed Twilight and made it hard to focus on her reading. Ross, Rainbow Dash, and Spike were all cackling over the photos of the gala that Pinkie Pie was showing them. Ross and Dash had both fallen over onto the floor, clutching their sides from laughing so hard at the cake-splattered nobles. And here's a picture of one of the noble mares who had been mean to Matilda early on, seeing that she was the only one in the gala that hadn't been hit with cake. Matilda was wandering around a bit looking for her friend, and I think she was in the kitchens when everything went crazy. Pinkie offered, showing another photo. Rarity and Applejack sat at another table along with Twilight. The pair of them had been listening to the White Unicorn Mare rant for nearly as long as the other group had been laughing. And then he tore off a scrap of my dress to wipe his lapel. He didn't even ask, he just did it. Rarity whined. Did ya ever get him back? Applejack questioned. No, the arrogant coward managed to slip away from me before I could drown him in cake. Rarity growled. How that one managed to become a prince is beyond me. He was nothing like any sort of royalty should be. Twilight took this moment to look up from her book. Princess Celestia got drunk and juggled the moon and sun, sending every pony into a panic. And have you met Princess Luna? Twilight demanded. That seems pretty par for the course for royalty. Besides, you must have done something for him to crank it up to 11 like that. Even given you were on him like a barnacle most of the night. Rarity frowned, though Applejack's ears perked up. What do ya mean, crank it to 11? Applejack asked. Prince doesn't like the types of mares he usually attracts, so he acts like an arrogant snob to drive them away. Though he tends to follow a set of rules for trying to drive mares off. One of the main rules is he doesn't do anything to harm them or their property. If he tore your dress and held you up to intercept a cake, he was past what he was willing to put up with. Cadence makes sure he follows those rules, as being the princess of love she doesn't like that he tends to break hearts with his way of driving mares away. Twilight explained. Well, she didn't try and stop him last night. Rarity scoffed. Ya said Cadence talked to him alone for a bit. She might have been that one who told him to go for it. Applejack offered. But surely the goddess of love wouldn't sabotage me? She should have seen how I was meant to be his true love, Rarity bemoaned. You're not. Twilight stated flatly. His true love is a Pegasus. What? Rarity demanded, getting completely derailed. He met a mare at one of his birthdays and fell for her, though she skipped out before he found out who she was. So he's been looking for her since. And given that he doesn't want to start a Cinderella hunt, he's kept it under wraps save for a few ponies he hired to look. But with how he's expected to show up at fancy parties and such, he's still got mares clinging to him like leeches. So he does his best to drive them away with over-the-top and very fake horrid personality. What? Rarity demanded again. Translation: he acts like a pawns to drive off them mares he sees as gold-diggin' harlots. Applejack chuckled. And given your description of how things went down, that's exactly what y'all looked like to him yesterday. Stallions only got eyes for one mare and all others are to be run off. How do you know all this? Rarity questioned. Prince and I are pen pals and I dated him once before he met the mare he was after. The four of us used to hang out back in Canterlot too. So I found out about the mare he's after, but he's mostly tight-lipped about what he knows of her. All I know aside from her race is that he's got it bad. Twilight smirked as Rarity stared at her. He's usually a very nice guy. But, why didn't you warn me? Rarity whined. I plead ignorance of the whole deal. Please direct all inquiries to the one who gave you his ticket. Twilight offered, looking back into her book. Rarity turned to look at Spike, who was still giggling at the photos. Spike. Yeah. Spike chuckled, looking over at Rarity. Did you happen to know about Prince Blue Blood's way of dealing with mares he has no interest in? Rarity's tone was cold enough that Ross and Pinkie Pie paused to look over at her. Yup. Spike admitted. The rest of the room got quiet as Rarity glared at the oblivious Spike. You knew? Rarity growled. Yeah. I mean, I didn't know you were gonna go after him. I didn't think your prince was Prince till I saw the pictures Pinkie took, but I knew he wasn't interested in any mares other than the one he's after. Spike shrugged, picking up another photo, chuckling. Rarity glared at the little dragon, while Applejack narrowed her eyes. Not buying a word of Spike's story, but not wanting to call him out and be an accessory to a murder. Any further conversation was cut off by a bright flash of light as a figure appeared in a large square of caution tape laid out on the floor. Everyone but Twilight and her brothers looked up at the flash. Twilight simply turned a page in her book. Good afternoon, Princess Luna. Twilight offered as Spike and Ross waved. You're up late. Greetings, Sparkles. We have double duty as our sister is still passed out after too much ale. Luna muttered, stepping away from the teleport square. She is quite the lightweight. So what brings you here today? Twilight questioned. We were told by a rather strapping handsome red stallion at Sweet Apple Acres that Applejack was present here. Luna explained. I am here, but I gotta warn ya. I wouldn't try and cozy up with Mac. Chwee's got a claim and she ain't exactly playing fair. Applejack frowned at the purple unicorn, who ducked a bit more behind her book. I apologized to Rose Luck and her tail will grow back. Twilight muttered. Honestly, it was her own fault for trying to ask him out in front of me. Luna slowly blinked, looking at Ross and Spike, who nodded. Noted. Luna swallowed, recalling how Cadance had reacted to her flirting with Shining, and decided to give up her planned attempts at wooing the stallion. But we are not here for you. We have already spoken with Fireball and Mrs. Regnolds, but we wish to inform you that the girls will be allowed to stay the weekend if they wish after their class trip. Tia owes us a few days off for dealing with her court and duties, as well as playing with our moon without permission. Spike raised an eyebrow at that. Wait, you mean Scootaloo, Apple Bloom, and Sweetie Belle? Indeed. Luna nodded. Thou are welcome to come along as well, Spike. Luna offered. Could be fun. Spike pondered. I wasn't really looking forward to going to all the tourist spots with the others on the field trip anyway, as I've already seen them all. Apple Bloom said they was gonna stay at Rarity's next weekend. Applejack frowned. She actually asked if they could stay at Sweetie's sister's house, which is an odd way to say Rarity. Pinkie Pie chimed in. I was there, remember, you asked me out there to see if I could help with her tummy ache. Indeed, they will be staying with Sweetie's sister. Us. Luna smiled. What? Rarity demanded, looking up at Luna, who stared back impassively. Thou acts surprised that such a sweet filly would be adopted as such after thou abandoned her to her fate while thou acted the part of a trollop. Luna raised an eyebrow before looking back to Applejack. No matter, please inform young Applebloom of this, Applejack. We must return to Canterlot. Perhaps we should draw a phallus or three on our sister's face for her to enjoy when she finally wakes for all the additional labor she has hoisted upon us. There was another flash and Luna was gone. Everyone in the library turned to look at Rarity, who seemed completely flabbergasted as to what happened. Getting no response from her, they all turned to Pinkie Pie, who smiled, holding up a photo of Luna and the Cutie Mark Crusaders swinging by a rope over the gala. Rarity ditched Sweetie Belle and Princess Luna adopted her as a younger sister. Pinkie Pie smiled. They all stared a moment more, looking back at the sputtering Rarity before Ross finally spoke up. Woof. Ross grumbled. I'm pretty sure Sweetie Belle wouldn't want you to call her auntie either, Ross. Pinkie Pie shrugged before telling the story of that part of the gala. Asterisk. 2 days after the gala, Celestia woke with a jerking start and a wince as sunlight struck her face. Her head was still pounding and she wanted nothing better to do than to remain in bed, though the light was very insistent. Celestia's response to that was to lower the sun so it got dark again. A moment or two later the sun shot back up and seemed to be even brighter. The Princess of the Sun cursed her younger sister as she slowly cracked open one eye and noted some psycho had pulled the curtains wide open. A brief headache-inducing spell, and they were closed again, with the room delightfully dark. Celestia was then faced with a new problem. Drinking her body weight in booze left her really needing to go to the bathroom. Weighing the options on whether or not she could explain away peeing the bed to the maids, the white alicorn simply groaned and slipped out of the comfortable place. If Luna had still been on the moon she might have done it and simply outlived the maids' gossip. With Luna around she'd never hear the end of it if she wet the bed, so she slipped into her bedroom lamenting the loss of her warm comfy place. As she was washing her hooves in the sink, Celestia's brain began to finally start waking up to notice things. The first was that she really shouldn't drink her weight in alcohol, particularly not as a chaser for a flask of Zap Apple homemade whiskey from Granny Smith. Second was that she had a number of scraps of paper speared on her horn. Pulling them off she noted that several of them were Uomis from Luna for being stuck dealing with the sun in her day court. The rest were from her assistant Flower Text, with various things of note that needed to be brought to her attention. Mostly complaints and gala bills, though there was a application to hire a few of the caterers on full-time and a reminder that Friday would have a school trip from Ponyville and she was expected to make an appearance, sober, clean, and not hungover, nor wearing the gorilla mask like last time. Tossing the lot of the papers aside, Celestia stomped back over to her bed, planning to sleep a few more days when she took note of an odd-shaped lump on the other side of her bed. Celestia blinked and frowned. The lump wasn't moving, so she probably stole the statue of Star Swirl from in front of the library again. Yanking the blanket away, her eyes snapped open wide and she staggered back with a shriek. Laying in the bed was the head of a horse. Celestia was on the verge of panicking when she took note of two things. The first was that the room now smelled like ketchup. The second was that the horse head looked very familiar, and that it had two mismatched eyes and two very different horns on it, with a snaggletooth fang in its maw with a short cropped mane that was almost zebra-like. What? Celestia began as the horse head vanished. Oh dear, panic and confusion? And here I thought you liked being woken up with surprises. Though I suppose the movie reference would be a little confusing for you. A voice chuckled. Celestia narrowed her eyes as she whipped around, not seeing anyone. Show yourself. It's not season 2 just yet. But I am more than eager to make my grand reveal after seeing all that chaos that 3 little tickets caused. I truly want to meet the fine individuals with that much commitment to the cause. There was a brief silence before a note appeared in the air above her, sticking onto her horn before a mocking laughter filled the room briefly before fading off into nothing. Yanking the note off her horn to read, Celestia's eyes widened. See you soon, Sully. Hugs and kisses, the chocolate kind. Daisy. Oh shit, Celestia winced. Author's note. And thus we start the run up to season 2. There's at least one more main chapter before I bring the story into the next season. End author's note. End chapter 119. Beast Night Ever. Epilogue.